Hey everyone, and welcome back to this thing. I don't really know what to call it because it is a podcast and a video in one. Yes, I am filming the podcast now. This is actually my first filmed podcast. In my last audio, I said that was going to be my first filmed podcast, but I didn't really like how it turned out in the end, so I was just like, I'm going to delete that and start over again, have this be my first filmed. So today, I'm going to be talking about a story of courage. It's just one that I learnt about a while ago, and it's just something that I've always been kind of wanting to tell and share with other people because I think it's so, as I said before, inspiring and motivational and just makes you want to do better with your life. So yeah, as you've seen from the title, it is the courageous story of Miss Norma. The story starts off with a woman called Norma Schmidt. I think that's how you pronounce the last name. It's a German last name and it's quite long. So, and I made sure to search up how to pronounce it because I'm always on these podcasts like trying to figure out how to say a word for like 20 minutes. But anyway, so yeah, Norma was a 90-year-old woman. So she had served as a member of WAY, which is the Women's Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Services, which pretty much allowed women back in World War II to enlist in the war, because back then women could only really be, nurses and kind of help out in a medical type of way. Obviously it's a lot different now, but back then that's kind of how it was. So I mean, from that already you can see how resilient and brave Norma was, because if it was me, I definitely wouldn't be forcing my way into a world war. But she's a resilient woman and had to do that. So after the war had finished, she moved with her husband from Toledo, Ohio to northern Michigan, where they raised their 2 children and fostered another. So they pretty much just had a normal life. It was pretty good. They kept, they were hard workers. They were from the greatest generation. So, they kept their priorities straight with family, work, home, community, and faith. That was something that was very important to her and her husband. And obviously she tried to instill those qualities into her children along the way, which I think she definitely did. But so, yeah, her and her husband, Leo, that was his name, Leo, they spent nearly 70 years together living by themselves, and they loved it, according to her daughter-in-law, Ramie Little. She was quiet and self-efficating. Is that a self-efficating? That's what I'm reading on my thing. She was content to happily walk a half step behind her outgoing and bubbling personality of her husband, which was, clearly, she was, the nice, gentle woman, and he was, more outgoing and more just, the one who probably he was the more extroverted one, while she was more extroverted and, liked having her own time to herself and with her husband. And they were a great couple. They were loved by pretty much just everyone they met, and they were pretty much just, your average, elderly couple that you see across the street, your neighborly elderly couple, the ones that everyone loves. And then pretty much after 67 years together, Leo, her husband, had sadly passed away from a terminal disease, which pretty much shocked Norma's entire world. Her soulmate, her life partner who had been with her for so long, has now gone, and no longer is he there when she wakes up, and no longer can she see his face every day. And obviously for most of us that's a huge shock. Someone you've spent so much time in your life with suddenly is no longer there. It can be very shocking, as I said, very much like a shake to the status quo in your life, and can be hard to kind of get your head around. And that's why you see a lot of the times couples usually, one passes away, and then about a few weeks to a month later the next one passes away because they can't live without their life partner. I mean, that's what happened sorry, my voice. that's what happened with my grandparents. My grandfather, who was actually a really healthy man, and most of his siblings actually lived to their 90s, and his father actually lived a few months off 100, but my grandfather passed away when he was 83 because he ended up getting not a hereditary cancer, but a cancer caused from asbestos inhalation from when he was younger, and he ended up passing away, and that was a huge shock to my whole family. Yeah, and then my grandmother actually ended up passing away, who, she was very frail and she relied heavily on him. So yeah, I don't think we really expected her to live much longer after he had passed, because she just wasn't really in the right mindset for that. But yeah, so yeah, her husband died, and pretty much 2 days later, Norma found out that she was actually diagnosed with a terminal uterine cancer. So pretty much terminal, we all know, means there's no cure. You only have a certain amount of time to live, and it's horrible, and it's not something easy to take. But Norma took it with stride, and she pretty much realized that she didn't want to spend her dying days through radiation therapy and chemo, and certainly not any surgery. So she didn't want to do that. She was like, nope, not doing that. I want to spend my last few days thriving and not worrying about going through all these horrible things, which they prolong your life, but at the end of the day just make things kind of worse. So pretty much for her retired son Tim and his wife Ramie, who I talked about before, they found themselves wondering, how would they care for their single-aged, ill parent. The option kind of boiled down to two things. Either they would put her in a home, which I don't think they really wanted to do, or they would take her into their own home. But the difference was, their home had wheels. They had the 19-foot Airstream that was what they lived in. It carried them, a happily nomadic couple, across the country for years, the country of America, if you didn't know. The lifestyle was about freedom and meeting people and seeing this, the fantastic United States without any discussion really. They pretty much asked Norma, would she like to tag along? And, they told her to think about it, and Little, which is her daughter-in-law, pretty much said without a doubt. She just basically said, let's get rolling. And pretty much it took about a month to close Leo's estate, her past husband, and to upgrade to a 36-foot motorhome with the combinations for the 3 adults and the large family standard poodle Ringo. So if you're watching my video of the podcast right now, I'll put a photo of him right here. Yes, that is their huge poodle Ringo. It is a huge white poodle. And so yeah, they pretty much hit the road and went right on through. And pretty much early on, Norma was often dizzy, and she was kind of adjusting to the medication that she had been put on because of the terminal cancer. And she was sleeping a lot and showing a lot of symptoms of her uterine disease. I hope I'm saying that right. Is it uterine? I don't know. But says her daughter-in-law as she became used to the road, the quiet woman who always had remained in the background was growing spunky. She wanted to see the world. She wanted to see things that she had never seen in her life. She was 90 years old, and she kind of realized, I haven't really experienced much, so why don't I just do it in my last few days or weeks or however long she had left. So she wanted to see the president heads, Mount Rushmore. And she stopped after being intimidated by the size of Ringo and soon was calling him her dog. She began sharing a beer with her son, and teetotaling Norma would not have really done, which is what her daughter-in-law says. She wasn't really the type of person to be involved in these types of things. But I feel like when we get to the end of our life, or when life seems to be coming shortly to an end, we become open to more things, and we want to experience situations that we were kind of scared of, and we really place fear around during our living life. So yeah, in fact, the trip was not only changing Norma, but it was also providing her son Tim with the chance to kind of get to know her as a person for the first time, and as he describes, a wonderful person, which was a joyful surprise to him because it was finally a time where he could actually, kind of learn to know his mother as more of a human and less as a mother, and more as like a friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, they became so much more closer, and which is such a great thing for her son, where for when she passes away, for them to have that good relationship. So the family traveled to New England across the Midwest and headed west, sometimes using a cane, sometimes in a wheelchair. Norma rode on boats, floated in hot air balloons, which her husband had always wanted to do, but never ended up doing in his life. So that was something that was really important for Norma, and kind of experiencing things that her husband never got to do. And she knew he was there in spirit and looking after her and making sure that they were having a great time together. They also went to places she had always dreamed to go to, seeing Yosemite, the Tetons, Yellowstone, Niagara Falls, and the Grand Canyon. All these iconic places that she always wanted to see. She finally got to see them, and she was kind of, it seemed like experiencing the world for the first time. She'd always been a very quiet, very, to herself, and not really a risk taker. And at this point she was like, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna live my life and enjoy the ride while, I've still got it. As the journey unfolded, Miss Norma finally spread her wings and lives life pretty much on her own terms. She was kind of just, free flowing, just going with the flow and enjoying things really for the first time, and not really becoming overwhelmed by, what was going on. She was living her life on her own terms for the very first time, and this was super rewarding for her. With each adventure, a once timid Miss Norma said yes to living in the face of death, which I feel like a lot of us should do, even if we're not in the midst of death. Just choosing living over anything else. Choosing happiness and freedom over stress, because as I've said on the podcast before, stress is honestly it's pretty much just punishment to yourself. It doesn't change anything, it doesn't impact anyone else, it only hurts you. And I think that's something that we should all kind of consider. Whenever you start to feel stressed, just realize that life's not about that. Life's not about stressing about everything. And whether it was experiencing her first ever pedicure, she had her first pedicure, in her 9 years of living, and also taking that hot air balloon, as I said, which her late husband never found time for. She finally was there and finding time for it. And with each passing mile, she also, if you read the book, which I'm talking about, there's a hilarious visit to a cannabis dispensary where she actually tries cannabis oil with excellent results, says her daughter-in-law. So that was great for her. Especially with cancer. They say cannabis and CBD oil and all that has great effects if you are suffering with that. But yeah, so her health was actually improving, and conversations that had once been taboo to begin with were kind of unfolding, and they were really just enjoying each other's company and having a lot of fun, which I feel like with a lot of elderly people, it's not really something that happens. You see them as this superior, or that you're elder and you don't really get to know them as a human and learn why they are the way they are. And I think this trip was super important for her son and her daughter-in-law to really get to know her as a human being and to really enjoy her company. And I think that was super important. So that's why I say, if you still have a grandparent that's still alive today, go out and talk to them, have a conversation with them. If they live in another country or in another state, give them a call. They would love that, especially if you're if you're a grandchild or a child, they would love it. And a lot of the times older people can feel very lonely and isolated, and literally would make their day if you give them a call. So give them a call, because I wish I could still call my grandparents today, but sadly, it's not the case. But you still know that they're with you in spirit. But just give them a call, whether it's your parents or your grandparents, and get to know them as a human being, and just enjoy their company, or just go over to their house and spend lunch with them, and go out to lunch with them, just bond with them and learn who they are. You know what I mean? Norma, Tim, and Ramie's bond in ways, they bonded in ways that they could never have anticipated, and their definitions of home, family, and friendship were rewritten as, strangers became friends and showed them and showered them with kindness. This whole story was portrayed on Facebook, during when it was happening back in 2016. Tim had actually made a Facebook account sharing their story, and it actually had many people watching, and it was great. But yeah, so she posed and mugging and giggling with a 50-foot statue of the Green Giant. They went to Disney, twitched her nose at live lobsters, and fell in love with key lime pie and root beer floats. Something that you don't typically find in an older person enjoying. She was loving Disneyland and all these sweet foods, and root beer floats, ice cream in a root beer. It's pretty great, and she was just enjoying her life and having fun as I've said 100 times, for the very first time. And but of course, at the back of all their minds, there was always the cancer, And on the family's second swing west, Norma was obviously growing much weaker and a lot sicker. It's just something that couldn't have been ignored. They had to really focus on it, and it was really, it was affecting her, and she wanted to enjoy herself as much as possible, but she really couldn't with the sickness and the, just getting weak, not being able to walk anywhere. She couldn't really do that at the beginning of the trip. She was always in a wheelchair or with a walking stick, and she had to take a lot of medication, and she just, was becoming weaker. And sorry, I just burped. But yeah, she was becoming weaker, and it just wasn't great, and they really noticed it, and they knew. Sorry, I keep burping. They knew that it was really, it was going to come to an end soon. So they made sure to have as many conversations with her as possible, learn as much as they could about her, and really just savor every moment they could, and tell her what they really thought about her, and what they wanted her to know before she left. Because I feel like that's a big regret a lot of people have before someone we know passes away. We have regrets of what we didn't say, or what we just wanted to say, or what we wanted to tell them. It's a big regret for a lot of people, and this was probably so great for them, because they had proper closure. And I think that's super important with everything in life, is to have a proper closure, whether it's the ending of a relationship, or the ending of someone's life, or the ending of a career. It's always great to have proper closure, because it can really affect you mentally if you don't have that closure and that proper goodbye. You will always obviously get over it at the end. Not get over it, but learn to grow through it. But I feel like it's a lot better and healthier situation when you get that proper closure, because you don't have to go through all the mental disturbances that you do go through when there's no closure. But obviously this would made them really upset, though, because they did become so close to her. Thought of her dying was really hard for them to really imagine. They didn't want her to go. It was just something that they didn't really want to deal with, didn't want to live with, is his mother passing away. She was so old, and he was even retired, so he was at an age where he was no longer working. So obviously she had lived a fulfilling and beautiful life, and had an amazing friends, amazing family, and I feel like at the end of her life she she would feel very blessed and very fulfilled, because I think that's one of the most important things that takes your deathbed is fulfillment and purpose and feeling like you did something and you lived and you didn't just work and slave away for a piece of paper and money, because I feel like that's not really what we were put on this planet for, is just to work. And I mean, a lot of people do feel that way. They think work is the most important thing to ever exist in life, but I don't know, I just personally I don't think it's something that you should really put all your time into. I think spending time with family is much more rewarding and fulfilling and just better. But I actually read something that said at the end of life, what was I saying? Someone did this what's it called, a thing where you get statistics and stuff, and they found out that the biggest regret people had was actually not having children or not having more children. And that is it's interesting to hear, because it's like, it was never, I didn't make enough money, I didn't have the best car, I didn't have the best house, I didn't have the best job. It was always family related. I didn't spend enough time with this person. And that's why it's always important to know that you gotta spend as much time with who you have when you have it. But anyway, so pretty much there's a quote by Little. She said, we had friends in the sand dune islands off the coast of Washington. That's where we parked the RV, where we called in hospice, and where Norma sadly finally passed away. And Ringo, her dog, stayed with her until the very end, as our, man's best friend always do. They're always there till the end. And, her daughter-in-law liked to describe it as a beautiful death. She liked to call it a beautiful death. And, it really was, it was fulfilling. It was a fulfilling death. And she got to spend her last moments with her son and with her daughter-in-law and with her dog. And, she experienced many things that, most people don't really get to do before they die. And I think it was super important for her to really do that and just not have the regrets, You know what I'm saying? People have their list of things they would like to do before they die, and a lot of the times it isn't completed. People don't complete it. They never find the time to do it. And usually there is a time, people just make excuses. We always make excuses for taking risks. Our brain's always like, don't do it, you can do this, do it later, blah, blah, blah. There's always the excuses, but the thing is, you have to ignore that. And that's a big thing that I've learned. You've just got to do it. You can't listen to that thing inside your head that's telling you not to do it, because if you listen to that, you're going to achieve nothing in life, because the biggest risk is taking no risks at all. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to leave that there. But there were actually spiritual support and respite caregivers who allowed Tim and Little to get away for a few hours, which was wonderful for them. Burr Smith, Norma, had made use of her last few months by delving into the joy in all around her. The people she met, the places she visited, and what her daughter-in-law calls the blossoming that engaged everyone she met. A particular joy that reminds her families that Nora was alive to hear that the blog post that Little had begun there to make, to blog their travels, and which had garnered thousands of followers all over the world, which eventually became a book, as I said, which is a way of sharing the growth and joy that Norma had discovered in her year's adventure. And were there any last sentiments that Norma offered in her last day? Simply, her daughter-in-law said to pass on the joy and experiences all you can. And she added, try a beer in her honor, or just a root beer float will do. So you know what? Go out and get yourself a root beer float, or try a beer. Live your life is pretty much what she's saying. In honor of her, live your life. Enjoy what you have. Never take anything for granted. So that's pretty much what this podcast was about. I hope you guys enjoyed the story and took something from it. I think it's super inspirational, and very just interesting to learn about, and it really just shows you at the end of life, all you really care about is just having fun and enjoying the small things with your family. And I think those are the things that we really, also in just in life, we enjoy the most, don't be a workaholic, because at the end of the day, it's just not fulfilling at the end of your life, knowing like, I worked 24 hours in the day. Like, no, you want to be like, I spent as much time with my family and enjoyed my life as much as I possibly could. So yeah, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure you give it a like, comment, share, and subscribe on the YouTube channel, or follow on whatever podcast thing you were listening to this on. And I will see you all with the next podcast. Have a great day, stay motivated, and peace.